Welcome back, Guardians. And today we're going to continue an old video, Iron Lords Part 2, and Wolves. I talked about Part 1 a good while ago, well over 6 months, but now it's finally time to go back to it, because back with Part 1, that was before the Rise of Iron DLC, and to be honest, there wasn't that much information about the Iron Lords, besides the fact that we knew the names of them, and a little bit of information about Efrideet, because she was the one that was supposedly, confirmed to be actually still alive now. But back then it was a whole big mystery. We all knew about Saladin Forge, he's the one who runs the Iron Banner, but that's not that important. But now, many months after the Rise of Iron DLC has been released, and all the information has been poured out and organized neatly by all the online people and Grimoire, we can now finally make the Part 2. I've said all the names before. There are 3 Hunters, 4 Titans, and 3 Warlocks, and the first Hunter is Efrideet. Now, I go into good detail about Efrideet in the other video, but now I'm just going to gloss over it again. Now, Lord Saladin was thought to be the only survivor of the Iron Lords. That was wrong. Efrideet actually survived, and she was just in hiding this whole time. She actually did survive the original Siva outbreak, the one in the very beginning, the one shown here. She decided to not tell Saladin Forge that she had survived. She just journeyed to the outer in the solar system. She gave up, she lost. So she decided to change her ways. She learned to use her light in a peaceful way. And then centuries later, Siva comes out again. So what did she do? She journeys back to the Iron Temple and surprises all of us, especially Lord Saladin. And then she fulfills her responsibility to the Iron Banner, serving all the other Iron Lords. Not much to her, but still nonetheless, what the hell were you doing, Efrideet? The next Hunter is Galleon. Now, Galleon loved to stay on Earth. He loved to fight the Fallen. In his spare time, he would hold up in his cave, and he would experiment with his items and test their worth in his gear material. He also loved to throw his knives, as hunters do. He had 3 of them, and he named each of them. Just like the rest of the Iron Lords beside Efrideet and Lord Saladin, he fell to Siva. He was one of the 9 to make it the replication chamber, and in an attempt to shut it down, he's one of the ones that ended up behind the door. When you, the Guardian, goes to finish the job, unfortunately Galleon is found alongside Yolder and Felwinter, and his armor had been warped by Siva, and you actually have to kill him again. It's unfortunate, but that's the truth. The next Iron Lord is Peron, also a hunter. He's one of the founding members of the Iron Lords, alongside with Radagast, Saladin, and Yolder. She stood up to the warlords after plaguing the earth during the Dark Ages. Peron was special in a way that she could always predict the actions of whatever the opponent and the group they went against was going to do, with near perfect accuracy. I say near because no one's perfect. She was a strategist. She was the one who would always tell you what to do. And if I were you, I would listen to her. For instance, Radagast and Saladin were defending a town from this warlord Segoth, and she correctly guessed where he and his pike mounted his troops and would come to attack them. Aware that they would take the most visible route to the town, despite that it would allow them to arrive in groups of 3, 3-men crew of them was able to fend off all of Segoth's men and force them to retreat, all because she knew where they were going to be. Eventually, their small team grew into a small army, and the lords were able to dispose the warlords and give Earth peace. You'll hear me talking about warlords a lot in this video, and that is because with this small army, or this small group of people, defending and getting rid of all these warlords, the people that got rid of them are the Iron Lords. That's the reason why they became the Iron Lords. Just to clear that out of the way. Peron was also one of the 9 to make it to the replication chamber, along with the others, and fell to Siva. Moving on to the Titans, we have Yolder, another female Titan and member of the Iron Lords. She was a guardian full of joy and ferocity. According to most accounts, Yolder was beautiful but fierce member of the Iron Lords, and particularly close friend of Lord Saladin if you watch the cinematics. As one of the first 4 Iron Lords, she fought alongside her friends to defeat all the warlords controlling the earth, as I stated before. During her campaign against the warlords, in one case, she was sent to engage in a single combat challenge against one of the warlord's agents to settle things. While she was preparing her makeup, Peron went to give her some advice. While Peron was worried about treachery from the opponent, Yolder wished she could face 2 opponents instead of 1. When the battle went underway, she defeated her enemy, and the warlord was eventually disposed of, as they all were. Yolder's one of the more important Iron Lords. In the cinematics, she is seen to be the one to close the door and seal everyone's fate. She did it for the greater good though. She didn't want Siva getting out anymore, and thus preventing the Siva outbreak until a couple centuries later. Next we have Radagast. Radagast was the first of the renowned Iron Lords. He is the one who was responsible for putting together such a great fire team. In one case, he had a particularly brutal battle against 5 enemy warlords, resulting in the devastation of the surrounding area. After this battle, Radagast became weary of guardians fighting and fearing one another, and expressed his desire to see them unite as protectors of humanity. Like the knights that existed long before the Golden Age, Radagast had his friends name wielders of the light they trusted to ride with them. And with Radagast, this is where we get some knowledge about the Iron Wolves. He wanted to give more people a chance to join in. So Yolder had Bredamart Peron named Daedrus, but Saladin didn't pick anyone. He only trusted Radagast. Bredamart and Daedrus are one of the Iron Wolves, and would soon to be later Iron Lords. They were known as the first 3 allies, handpicked by each of the original Iron Lords, but ultimately put together by Radagast. Up next we have Lord Saladin, or Saladin Forge. We all know who he is. I don't really need to go into him. I've made an entire video about him. And the last Titan is Sylmar, an architect of the Iron Temple atop Felwinter's peak, and a talented architect of unbreakable stubbornness. He was always looking for ways to offer better protection. Sylmar was a part of the original generation of Iron Lords. He was not of the original Big Four, I want to say. He traveled around the world, defeating those guardians who used their abilities to subjugate rather than protect. He was known among his friends and peers for being stubborn, devoted to defending the structures he created from enemy attacks. He cared more about his architecture than the people, but he did care about the people, don't get me wrong. During a particular fallen siege, Sylmar defended the same structure even after it fell. He rebuilt it and defended it until it was knocked down again, repeating the cycle several times. When asked by Saladin why he kept rebuilding it, Sylmar said that he was trying until it could not be knocked down, with the hopes that the Iron Lords could build the city of the dreams on that spot. If you get knocked down, just build it back up, I guess. Next we have Felwinter, one of the Warlocks, a warlord and master of the Voidwalker, who gave up his power in pursuit of peace alongside the Iron Lords. He was a true believer in his companion's goal, and more merciless toward enemy warlords than any of them. See, Felwinter started out as a warlord, like so many of the first generation Guardians, and eventually the Iron Lords came to challenge him. Seeing a chance to become peaceful and paranoid that his territory would be taken from him otherwise, he abandoned his status as a warlord in hopes that he could stand with the Iron Lords as they changed the world. Unlike the others though, Felwinter was more brutal towards his enemy, not having their willingness to show mercy, but not completely merciless. An example of his merciless is there was a Titan named Citan. He had learned the hard way that when Felwinter, in his domain, gave him a chance to surrender peacefully and join the Lords as he had, Citan refused, and before he could get one hidden, Felwinter used the Void combined and combat training from Yolder to best him. Aware that Citan would never surrender, Felwinter used the Void one final time to break Citan's neck, killing him. Felwinter expressed that no one would stop the Iron Lords from creating peace in the world. Despite his desire to offer him life with the Lords, and knowing they would consider sparing him, Felwinter knew Citan better. And instead of letting him surrender later, possibly, he just killed them all together. And the moment when his ghost came out of hiding to revive him, Felwinter pulled out a shotgun that you all probably know so well in the Crucible, maybe not now, and fired 2 shots, one to kill Citan a second time, and the other to destroy his ghost. Up next we have Scory, another warlock, a singer for the lost of the battlefield, and a singer of the sun on it. Scory was gifted in lifting the spirits of her comrades in any situation. This little quote kind of sums up her entirely. It's Lord Galleon and Lady Scory. You're still working on the Iron Song? Why don't you just change the meter if it bothers you so much? Change the... Are you kidding me? Why don't you just change it using a whip? Change the meter. Unbelievable. Lady Scory loved to sing and loved music, but also stubborn, faithfully fighting alongside the Iron Lords against the warlords who had taken Earth and the fallen who threatened humanity. Scory was known for creating and singing impressive songs to honor the lords who permanently fell in battle, especially for composing the Iron Song, which I just mentioned, designed to commemorate her closest allies. Scory took great time and care to create this particular song. It should include the names of all her allies in the song. Even though their names were difficult to match the rhythm, creating the time took so much work that Scory dedicated the time that was meant to be used to prepare for battle to this song. However, even when it seemed like she was focusing on composing, she was always ready to fight when the time came. A badass nonetheless. And the last Iron Lord is Temir, a talented stormcaller, a fearless warrior, and an avid researcher. He took an extreme amount of joy in creating new ways to fight the darkness. Now, Temir sought to end the reign of terror wrought by the earliest generations of Guardians. Alongside his companions, stood up to the warlords, and eventually succeeded in dispatching them. At some point, Temir learned the existence of Siva, alongside with everyone else. Temir doesn't really have an in-depth story, but he does have a legendary hand cannon after his name, and when learning about Siva, he devoted himself to tracking down the technology. Whether by himself or dragging more of his fellow lords along, he followed every lead of Clovis Bray's lost secrets he could find, one of the more driven ones to defeat Siva, or find it and use it for himself. As for the Iron Wolves, they still seem to be a mystery, but not so much of a mystery as they used to be. A couple of years ago, I want to say now, I made a video about Iron Wolves that I didn't know anything about them, but now we know more. The second generation of Iron Lords, and some were lucky enough to be raised up to the Iron Lords, but never really enough to be praised as one. They're still labeled the Iron Wolves. We do know their names, of course. There's Ashraven, there's Bredamar, which I mentioned before. These people had to be hand-picked to be on this kind of squad. There's Collivance, there's Daedrus, which I already said. There's Finala, there's Hakan, there's Nerwin, there's Tormod, there's Waylorin. These are all names of guns, obviously, in Iron Banner. That's how we know the names. Maybe you figured that out, maybe you didn't, or maybe you've seen all the videos before. If you're still a little shaky on the information I just gave you, I think the only thing I didn't really talk about well was the Warlord conflict. All the Warlords. Now, these weren't the Fallen, these were actual Guardians. I wouldn't say Guardians, actually, though. It'd be like if you were to wake up as a Guardian in the very beginning of Destiny and not go to the tower and use your light for good, but instead use your light for your own personal gain, just doing whatever you want. You can take over various parts of the planet, you can make things your own, you can make people that don't have the light be your own subject. But that's where the Iron Lords come in. The Iron Lords not only came around and disposed of all the Fallen, but they made sure to get rid of every warlord that ever came to power during the collapse years. This is the time period I'm talking about, during the collapse. And that's why Felwinter is so merciless. Like I said, Felwinter was a warlord. He's one of the very few people to actually change over to an Iron Lord. He gave Seaton a choice, he didn't take it, so he ended up just, shooting his neck, shooting his ghost, who revived him, and he killed him twice. That's the kind of guy Felwinter is. And that's all the information we have on the Iron Lords. There's a little bit of, some details hidden between here and there. But most importantly, this is all the stuff you need to know, if you want to know. But anyways, Guardians, that's been it for me. Hope you guys enjoyed. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Later, Guardians.